Positive vibes, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. I used to have a negative mindset and stayed stuck. I realized this and flipped the switch. With a positive mindset, life is phenomenal. Listen in as my guests and I bring fresh perspective and add positive vibes to the world every Sunday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific on VT Radio Universal. Positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world.
VT Radio Universal.
And good morning and welcome to this week's episode of Positive Vibes, making positivity and gratitude louder in a podcast world. And this morning...
Hey there. I do apologize for my lighting. It could be a bit better, but this is what I got today. So, yes, I'm still in Portland. I'm doing good. I'm doing really good today. I am a hybrid of a lot of different areas. I was born in the Midwest. I was born in Missouri around the Boot Heel. Lived in Illinois for a little bit, Arlington Heights. Moved back to Missouri. Then the family moved to Connecticut, out in the East Coast. From there, I moved to Michigan. And from Michigan, I moved to Portland. Yeah, so kind of like, made my way here. So we're both for now, and based on my history, I can't stay in any one place for eternity. So I don't plan, but this is where I drop anchor. I don't know that this is where I will drop anchor, but for right now, it's serving its purpose. I'm learning a lot. I've grown a lot. I've found my voice here in Portland. I mean, there are a lot of resources to do that here. Not that I didn't have one elsewhere, but I think I was really able to explore my creativity more so here. Just because there were a lot more resources here. Well, somewhat. I mean, not that the resources weren't available in Connecticut or in Detroit. You know what I mean? Because Connecticut, it's right next door. Like the whole East Coast might as well be New York City, even though it's not. But I think that in Michigan, they say, on every street corner there's a church or a liquor store. Like in Detroit, that's literally what they say. And here it's kind of like, on every street corner, there's kind of like some kind of created outlet and a naturopath. And this is from somebody moving from Detroit, moving here. That's kind of the way I see it. So it's not like there were more resources here. I just think that they were more in your face here. Or at least a lot more in your face. Like you don't have to dig for them so much. You don't have to look for them. They're there if you want to see them. That's a big one. I was diagnosed. They say that a woman over 30 should never reveal her age, but I look fabulous for my age, so I don't care. I'm 53 now. And I was Thank you very much. But I'm 53 now, and I was diagnosed when I was 31. But prior to that, I had symptoms for 6 years. So you're saying, when did I present? I presented probably around the age of 25. I wasn't diagnosed until the age of 31, officially. And that was kind of, I really had to be assertive in the way that I was diagnosed, because I didn't know what it was. I knew that I had problems walking. I knew that I had problems with lethargy. I was very tired all of the time. There were a couple instances where I literally could not move anything from the waist down. I just those momentary paralysis and stuff. And so these are the things that I knew were happening. But to try to explain that to my PCP or anything like that, because they weren't specialists, they just weren't getting it. And there are other variables involved that I won't really go into right now. But it took me going to a doctor that works with bones. I'm sorry, I'm having an MS moment. The name just sort of. Thank you very much. So I was living with my mother at the time, and she actually saw that I was having these problems walking. I was limping, like, and you know, with MS, you're symptomatic for like maybe 20 minutes, and then you sit down, it's good, you know, or you know, that's kind of the way it worked with me. Like I was limping and stuff like that if I had been on my feet for too long, and then I would sit down for about 30 minutes, and then I would get a resurgence of energy. But my mother saw that and she got really concerned. We didn't know what it was. I didn't, she didn't. So she thought that maybe it was something in my bones. So she's like, I want you to go see this particular doctor over here. And she even paid out of, because at the time I wasn't insured, she paid out of pocket for me to see this doctor. And I went, and he was like, okay, so take some glucosamine chondroitin and take this and that. And if your symptoms don't improve, come back in 6 weeks. So they didn't improve. So I went back in 6 weeks, and I said, look, the same thing is still happening. I took these medicines religiously, and they started laughing at me, kind of like, there's nothing we can do. You know, I knew that they were thinking that this was all in my head. And of course, being a somewhat intelligent, socially intelligent individual, while they were like out of the office, you know, and stuff like that, and giggling as they passed the door, I pretty much had to think about how I was going to present this in a way to get what I needed. And the doctor came back in and said, you know, there's really not much we can do outside of the glucosamine chondroitin. And I said, you know what, look, I said, you guys take an oath. Do thy patient no harm. This is the oath that you take. I said, and so if you have me walking out of here after telling you these symptoms are persisting, you're doing me harm. I said, so here's what I'm going to present to you. I said, you've got medical books back there. I'm telling you what my symptoms are. You can look up what my symptoms are, and you can take an educated guess as to what you think it might be. I said, but I'll tell you this right now. If I walk out of this office and 2 years from now, we actually find out what it is, you're not going to want to have that happen, nor will the board of directors of this hospital want that to happen. So I suggest you go back, figure it out, and give me someplace to go. Like, point me in the right, if you can't help me, point me to somebody who can. This is a hospital. There are doctors, plural, here. And so he left, and 20 minutes later, he said, there's a neurologist on the 8th floor. She's waiting for you. And so I went to that neurologist, Valerie Curtis was her name, and she basically said, if these symptoms get any worse in the next month, I want you to go straight to the ER in this hospital, tell them I'm your neurologist, and we'll look at getting you diagnosed. And of course, I didn't take advantage of the situation. I waited for a while. And nothing was getting better. And I went to the ER that within like maybe 3 weeks or so. And that's where they pulled out like vials of like a pint of blood, a vial at a time. I had the EEGs, and I had my MRIs, and that's when I was officially diagnosed at the age of 31. I pretty much, I had to subtly threaten them though, for that to happen. Like, you don't want me to come back here and find out. Like, you do not want that. You don't want that. Because, you know, it's kind of like walk softly and carry a big stick. That's kind of how I roll. I mostly write poems. You know, I kind of write from the heart. It's therapeutic in a way, but at the same time, I'm sure it's relatable, you know, for people. Because, you know, if it's my experience, chances are it's somebody else's experience too. So that's kind of my wheelhouse is poetry, but I've ventured off into writing prose a little bit, but I can never finish a prose. Like, I get the idea, and of course I've got like 2 books that are kind of swimming around in my brain right now, 2 different ones. But writing prose is a lot different than writing poems, whereas poems, it's kind of like it's kind of like an injection, like a reverse injection. You know, it's quick, You know, it's powerful with a plunge. You know, you get those words out, and it's kind of like whatever you were feeling or whatever your heart wanted to say, it's there, and it's there in a matter of minutes or seconds or what have you. With prose, it's a little bit different, because with prose, you need a paintbrush with prose. You know, there's a lot of description that's involved. It's kind of like, you know, tell them what you told them, tell them, and then tell them what you told them, but you can't really tell them. You have to tell them in a way that keeps them, you know, involved and keeps them wanting to read more. And, you know, how you describe something. You don't want to just say, you know, that blue dress. You know, you want to use words like azul, and you know, you want to compare it. You want to compare the blue to something, you know, to give an idea of the specific hue, the specific color, you know, the density of how deep it is. You know, you don't want to just tell them. You want to paint the picture. And although I enjoy doing that, there is something about writing a poem where you can say that in a couple lines. You can do that in a couple lines, whereas with prose, you have to do that in a few sentences, sometimes a paragraph or two if you really want to get that deep. So not that I have problems writing it, it's just a little bit more difficult for me to focus more on writing prose than poetry. Yeah, they're there. You know, it's kind of like you're in that zone and they're there. And some of my poems rhyme and some of them don't. You know, it's all in, for me, it's all in where I am at when I'm writing. You know, where I am, what I want to convey. If the rhyme is there, the rhyme is there, but I don't think of it. You know what I mean? It just is. If it's a poem that's going to be a rhyming poem, it is. And if it's not, it's not. And generally, I don't know what the poem's going to be until it's finished. Yeah, well, and it's, you know, I think as a writer, I think we understand what it truly means to be present. Because in that moment when we're writing poems, we are fully present. It is us, the pen, the page, and that's it. You know, that's it. And, you know, that's all you need in that moment. You know, that is your bread of life right there. You know, in that moment, it's you, the pen, the page. And it's, for me, it's an experience that I kind of cherish, because that's when I'm truly within myself and I'm truly present and I'm truly acknowledging everything that I am and every place that I've been and every feeling that I've ever had. You know, everything just kind of comes together. Yeah. And you don't you don't need explanation there. You're not you're not doing it to please other people. It is what it is. And that's, I think, when you're truly who you are, you know, because you're not doing it to please anybody else. This is your story, you know, like it or whoever likes it, whoever doesn't, but it's unapologetically you, you know. And I think that's why I embrace writing so much for me, you know, because I don't write anything that I don't know. And it's not to please anybody else, you know. I seldom share what I write, even though, like, sometimes I'll finish writing something, I'm like, damn, that was good. You know, like, you know, and like, but at the same time, it's like, I don't write for the sake of, you know, I don't write for the sake of monetization, and I don't write for the sake of other people. You know, does it mean that I won't monetize my writing eventually? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that the purpose of my writing is not to monetize. And I think when you're, you know, if you are not writing for the sake of writing, in my opinion, if you're not writing for the sake of writing, then you should think twice about why. You know, it's just like creating art. If you're not creating art for the sake of creating, because we're all put on this earth to create something. We're all put on this earth to contribute something. In order to contribute, we create, whether it's, you know, creating you know, vegetables from a garden from seeds, or whether it's whether your gardening is on a piece of paper, or whether, you know, your gardening is on a canvas. You know, we're here to create. And so if you're not creating for the sake of creating, you have to think about why you're creating that one thing. And that's just my personal opinion. You know, there are people who will create art for the sake of making money, but I think that they're creating art for the wrong reasons. But that's my opinion again. But it's evolved into what you're doing now, you know? So I mean, again, that was just kind of my opinion. But by the same token, if in your heart your goal was not to help other people, you wouldn't be here, you know. And so this is kind of like, the book was just the seed you planted, but this is what's kind of blooming at this point. And so you can't really, you know, don't stop the momentum. I don't see that you're doing that. But at the same time, you know, sometimes our reasons can evolve into something that's meant for the greater good of all, you know. And I think that that's kind of what's happened here, you know. So, yeah, Pacific Northwest MS Friends. Yep. And you know, when we were supposed to meet, we were actually supposed to have lunch the day you met Gary Vee. I'm so glad you said, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm glad for, well, not that I didn't want to meet you, but I'm glad for you. You know what I mean? And how all of that has worked out. And I was totally cool with that, because everything, you know, the way things happen are the way things happen, you know. But I'm glad that we're finally getting a chance to talk today. And maybe another time, if you're ever in town, you know, just give me a holler. Oh, wow. You know, before the pandemic, it was thriving pretty hardcore. You know, there's the OHSU has a brown bag lunch, I think, every month, where they have like a speaker from the MS community, usually like a neurologist or a specialist or something like that. And like he or she will come and address certain things that are of concern in the MS community. There's also, of course, the pharmaceutical dinners. Whether you're on meds or not, you can go. They talk a lot about the meds, but then after, you do have a doctor or a specialist to answer questions. I mean, we had a pretty thriving MS community in Portland, Oregon. Seriously, before the pandemic. And now it looks like a lot of things are happening online, you know, via Zoom or, you know, and things like that. Personally, I'm looking forward to things getting back to normal if, you know, they can keep everything under control in terms of COVID. I'm not, you know, rushing to get back, but I'm looking forward to when things do return back to normal. But yeah, the MS community in Portland we're pretty tight. It's a pretty big community here, pretty active.
Right on. Yeah, that's what I've seen on. That's what I've seen in the Facebook group, the Pacific Northwest MS Facebook group, and there's another one. I don't know. I thought there was another one down there, another Facebook group. But
well, there's a few.
Yeah,
there's a few. I think there's Adventures in MS. There's that one. There's MS Without DMD, but that's everywhere. There are a couple different groups that are here. If you really want to know kind of what's going on, Pacific Northwest MS Friends is probably like your one-stop shop for all things MS when it comes to dinners and activities and things like that.
Yeah.
Not that the other groups don't do that, but I think Pacific Northwest MS Friends pretty much has their thumb on the pulse.
Yeah, that's what I've gathered from looking at a couple of the other groups that are down in that area, is like Pacific Northwest MS Friends. That's the hookup right there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I know it's it seems, you know, it's been a little while since I was in that group on Facebook, or, you know, actually online in that group. But I did meet Rick and Kim
Okay.
from that group. I met them when I was on my road trip. They happened to be going to an outdoor concert and happened to having dinner, barbecuing or whatever. So I messaged them and said, "Hey, I'm in town. I'll meet you there." Or they said, "Come on over." So I met them there, and yeah, that was real cool. And then I met them up here in Olympia. They drove up here for some MS talk and dinner at a restaurant. And so I met them there. That was pretty cool. But yeah, it is a pretty tight-knit community, just getting, having that bond, having that in common, living with the same, living with the same disease. And, it's like knowing how we go through life with it, or at least having an inkling how the other person's going with it, since it is a snowflake disease and everyone's got it a little different.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think what I really enjoy about Pacific Northwest MS Friends and any MS group that I'm actually involved with is the fact that we don't sit around and woe is me.
Yeah.
Like that's not even it. It's more like we have issue, and actually, like, let me backtrack. The MS community is probably, like, we're a smart bunch, like all of us, not just Pacific Northwest MS Friends, but just we have to know what myelin is. You know what I mean? we if you don't know science, you learn it as an MS patient. At least in terms of how it relates to multiple sclerosis. You're learning it as you go.
Yeah.
And I think what I really enjoy about being affiliated with others that are diagnosed with the same thing is that we all have an unspoken understanding of what each other goes through. So we don't have to, explain why we're not on a cane or why we're not riding a scooter. We don't have to explain that. We don't have to explain why we're having a bad day. We can just say we're not having a good MS day. Okay, is there anything I can do? Is there anything that you need? There's no explanation involved. And so we can all sit around and we can laugh and we can cry and we can joke together without feeling sorry for each other, because this is just how we exist. We don't have to have sympathy for each other. We have empathy for each other, which is a difference.
Yeah.
I've walked in your shoes in some way, so I understand where you are. And based on that, that is kind of the foundation for all of us, and that is where our joking comes from, whether it's MS related or not. That is where our closeness comes from, whether we like each other or not. There is that mutual understanding of this is where we are, and I wish no harm on you because this is where we come from. So
yeah, definitely, it's that common bond and empathy. That's definitely become a empathy has definitely become not necessarily the prime thing in my life, but it's become one of the forefront things, is having empathy for others. I know, it's like having empathy for fellow MSers, like we're talking about. And, in my case, having empathy for fellow brain injury survivors. And, it's just like, and other facets of my life, and it's just like knowing that, maybe not knowing exactly what they're going through, but
having an idea.
Yeah, having an idea of feeling the same thing at one time or another. Because we deal with the same general disease. Yeah. And, I
think empathy is really important for human existence. I mean, I believe that we've all been put on this earth for relationships, and how we relate to one another. And we can't really truly relate to one another if we don't attempt to feel empathy. for someone. Sympathy is kind of like a class system almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, I feel sorry for you, but that doesn't really give anybody any kind of license to feel superior. And I think sympathy is kind of like this veiled superiority type of position that people have, whereas empathy kind of puts you on the same level as the person that you're talking to. And I would much rather try to feel empathy for people, or try to look and see, okay, I may not know exactly what they've, like you said, I may not know exactly what they've gone through, but in a way I can sort of relate because this is where I've been. So I try not to use the word sympathy, you know. I try not to, because to me that's just a throwaway word. That's something that people use when they are not capable of feeling empathy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, a saying just came to mind, but I don't think a saying about sympathy being between two words in the dictionary just came to mind, but I don't think I'll say it right now.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's like vulgar, but anyway, I don't think I should say that on the air.
Maybe you can share it in a DM.
Yeah, I'll send it to you in a message.
Sounds good.
Yeah, but definitely empathy over sympathy any day. It's, yeah, I totally relate with that, because it's like sympathy, you know, in thinking about it, sympathy just, you know, it's sympathy is a good thing in a respect, but then it's like, you know, it just, I don't know.
But eventually, like, sympathy doesn't require action, though.
Yeah, exactly. And it just sort of seems to, you know, drag one down to that, you know, drag one down to feeling, you know, that, oh, I'm sorry, you know, and just sort of a downtrodden feeling. Whereas, you know, empathy, it's like, you know, okay, let's, you know, equal the playing field here.
Yeah. And that's, to me, that's the difference. You know, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me.
Yeah.
You know, because you can feel sorry for me all damn day, but what are you going to do about it? Whereas empathy, almost like, you can have empathy and not act, but if you have empathy, how can you not act? You know, with empathy, you know, it's kind of even asking the question, is there anything I can do? You know, whereas sympathy is just like, oh, gee, I feel sorry for you. Okay, bye. You know, whereas empathy is, man, I felt that way before. And gee, when I felt that way, it would have been nice if somebody did this. So why don't I see if they need this? You know, so to me, that's just the difference. I think it's more human to be empathetic than it is to be sympathetic.
Definitely. You got that, you get a connection instead of an, oh, I'm sorry to hear that, and disconnection. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
sympathy is more of a disconnection. That's why I'm like, sympathy implies like a class system. Somebody who's good and somebody who's not so good. And the somebody who's good is kind of like, I feel really sorry for the people who are not so good, or is not as good as I am.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just kind of the way I see it.
Yeah. And, like I was just thinking, we were talking about sympathy and how it's like, oh, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry to hear that, you know, and then move on. It's like, you know, I've had people, you know, that maybe people that just met me or whatever here, you know, find out I have multiple sclerosis, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And then, maybe an hour later I'm running 5K, you know, it's like, sorry to hear that. Well, why are you sorry to hear that? You know, I still do my thing, you know, or maybe you go off and, you know, write this epic poem, you know.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, what are you sorry for? you know,
Mhm.
still able to do my thing and, you know, get this cool, super cool stuff done. You know, it's like, okay, whatever.
Well, and I find myself in that same exact place. You know, like there are times when I'm on a mobility scooter. There are times when I'm on a cane. There are times when I'm not using either. And for people who are not capable of empathizing, to them it's kind of like, if you're walking, then why do you need a cane? And if you're walking, why are you on a mobility scooter? And if you know, and so there's all of these, you know, all of these judgments that are placed. And the thing is, unless you know, you have no idea. So unless you are a multiple sclerosis patient or know somebody who has it, then you know that just because we don't look sick doesn't mean that we're not. And just because I'm in a moment where I'm not using a cane or a scooter, that means that I'm having a good day. You know what I mean? Kind of like, be happy for me that day. Instead of kind of judging, why aren't you on your cane or scooter? You must be faking it. It's like, dude, you cannot fake an MRI, no matter how hard you try. You cannot fake scar tissue on your brain and spine. Sorry, doesn't happen. So my thing is, like, I feel that with you as well. And it's kind of like, because you are diagnosed with this thing that the people who are sympathetic aren't familiar with, they don't understand that we can still function like everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, we just need to modify at times how we go about doing things. You know, like even writing. If writing for me is such a more easier flow than it is speaking. You know, I have brain farts all of the time. I call them MS moments, you know, because I can be in the middle of a sentence and totally lose track of where I am in that sentence. That doesn't happen when I'm writing. That does not happen when I'm writing. Things just sort of flow, you know, and it's kind of hard to explain that, but at the same time, people don't deserve an explanation. This is our life. If you care, then ask, and when you're given the answer, accept it. You know, but human beings are human beings. What can you do? This is how things are. So I feel you, though. I do.
Yeah, it's it's like I can totally relate to those blank spots, strange mental blank spots. I read that somewhere, and that's just stuck in my head. Strange mental blank spots. But
question: does it happen when you're writing?
No, it does not happen when I'm writing, and I totally relate to that. But it's like, you know, I can blame it on my MS lesions, or I'm pretty sure I can still blame it on my brain injury. You know, even though they say those bruises have healed. I've looked at my MRIs from, you know, since I have MS now, and my lesions are in about the same. And I actually have copies of the CAT scans and MRIs from back then after my brain injury when I was 11. And I've yet to sit down and set them side by side, but I'm pretty positive my lesions are in right about the exact same spots as the bruises from when I was a kid. So I'm pretty sure there's a connection there. You know, like the disease, multiple sclerosis, the lesions will attack the weakest cells. So that's my thinking on that, anyways, how they're connected. But, you know, so it's like I can blame that. I can blame MS. I can blame my brain injury. I can blame my drinking and drugging when I was a teen. I can, you know,
or just plain getting older.
Yeah. Or I can pin it on maybe getting a year or two older than I was when I wasn't having such mental blank spots. But, but, you know, the thing is, you know, is just like, find your outlet, find what works for you. Is like writing. Yep. Writing works great, you know, don't have those, you know, mental blank spots, if you will, or MS moments.
Well, and that's why I call them, because I didn't have those mental blank spots before the diagnosis. Yeah. You know, it was happening, I think, during that 6 years, I went undiagnosed. So I just call them MS moments, that's what I call them, and even me, like I have a benign tumor as well. It's not a brain injury, but it's a benign tumor. They're keeping an eye on it, making sure that it doesn't grow. But I mean, that could be it too. I don't know how long that thing has been there. It's been there for, they can't tell me how long it's been there. It's just kind of there. But for me, if I don't want to have that moment, I'll just pick up a pen and start writing.
Yeah. Probably a very wise idea, just to, if you want to keep going, just put it on paper.
There you go. That's my lifeline,
Yeah. Right on. And another thing I wanted to ask, just so that myself and everyone else knows, so I know you've mentioned, some days you walk, some days you have a cane, some days you're on your scooter.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, like, how is your, how is the system or transit system or whatever down there for getting around town?
Oh my gosh. You don't need a car in Portland. You really don't if you're in the city. So, I mean, there is the MAX, which is like the train, kind of like a New York subway, sort of, comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
That's the MAX. And then you've got fixed route, which is like your regular buses. And then you've got the streetcar. And all of them are ADA compliant.
Oh, wow.
All of them.
Awesome.
Every single one. Every single one have ramps for the mobility scooter, and ADA seating for people with mobility impairments.
Yeah.
So if you are diagnosed with any kind of mobility impairment, Portland is one of the places that you need to be living, because they definitely accommodate, and especially moving out here from Detroit. Detroit does not have a mass transit system anywhere close to Portland. And I have actually heard that people from other states come to Portland to see how mass transit is done, because it is that good. It is that smooth. So in terms of mass transit, I couldn't be in a better place.
Right on. That's so awesome that they have, so a few options for you.
Oh, and there's also the Paratransit as well. So the Paratransit is door to door. So if you don't feel like, waiting for a bus or the MAX or the streetcar, you qualify for Paratransit, you call and you make a reservation like an Uber. This is what, but not necessarily like an Uber. You call and tell them, I'm going to this address. My appointment is at this time, and I need to be picked up at this time. And of course, nothing is ever really like right on the money. So if your appointment is at 10, you might get there by like 8:45. But they drop you off at the door, they pick you up at the door. So, I mean, these are all of the options that are available for people who need that kind of service. And if you're more independent, then you can definitely take the fixed route. But in terms of mass transportation, yeah, Portland is the place to be for people who are mobility impaired.
That's awesome. That is really awesome. I know, having had to rely on public transit in the past, I started riding the buses when I was in my teens, and and I was having to ride from way out in Enumclaw into Kent or Kent for counseling, and I was just riding the bus all over on my free time. And then when I got out of school, I was still riding the bus everywhere, and then they cut back bus service. So, then I wasn't, well, by then I had a car, but anyway, yeah, I've had to rely on public transit in the past, and even, brief periods where my car was down, I've had to, go back to riding the bus. But, I do remember hearing and reading about a few options out there so far as so far as like you're saying, the paratransit, I forget what they call it up here, maybe the same thing, but, you know, and then there's the train, the commuter train Sounder that goes between Olympia and Seattle, and even, well, the north one goes between Everett and Seattle. I've ridden that a few times, and that's definitely a nice way to get downtown Seattle. And rather than driving my car up there to see my MS specialist, I would just drive down the hill to Sumner, or even the station there in Bonnie Lake, and maybe catch a bus to the train station and then zip. I'm in Seattle, don't have to pay for parking. Had to walk up the hill to the Swedish MS Center, but it's like saved all that hassle with traffic and parking and all that. So it was a bonus.
Well, I know, like, put it this way, like, especially when you're downtown in Portland, having a car is just, you're paying to park. So not only are you paying for your car if it's not paid off, and you're paying for the insurance, license, registration, and maintenance, but you're also paying helly amounts just to park the thing. And that's why I'm like, if you're living in the Portland or the Tri-County area, Washington, Clackamas, or Multnomah County, you don't really need a car. If you're going to live in Beaverton, yeah, you might need a car if you're living in Beaverton, just because it's more suburban. Clackamas may be the same way, but if you're going to be spending a lot of time downtown, a car is just an additional expense here, and if you can, awesome, good for you. But it's a headache just to find a place to park sometimes that's affordable.
Yeah.
So that's my feeling about cars in Portland and the Portland area.
Right on. Yeah. I for a while there, I when I was having bad side effects from from Rebif, the MS treatment I was on, when I was on that and having bad side effects, I went ahead and got a handicap placard for my car, which came in handy because you can park anywhere on the street and everything. And but it's like I went into after I'd started running, and I'd been running a few half marathons and marathons, and my I just happened to look up one day and noticed the date. I hadn't used it in a long time, but happened to look up and notice the date was it was almost the exact date or the exact month time that my handicap placard would expire. And so I went in to get it renewed, and not really thinking about it, I just went in, got it to get it renewed, and she said, you're gonna have to go in and see your MS specialist, and we need a doctor's proof or whatever. They need a proof from the doctor that I'm disabled. And I'm like, well, I thought this is a permanent thing. And then she's like, well, we still need proof every 5 years or whatever, just to because there are a lot of people saying oh, I'm disabled. Make sure that it's
ongoing.
Yeah, and they get it, and just to get the free parking downtown or whatever. And it's like, well, actually, I hadn't been to see my MS specialist in a couple of years, and I'm like, I don't really have a need to go see her, so I guess, so far as this placard's concerned, I'm not disabled anymore, whatever. And I just let it go at that. And, ever since then, I haven't had one, and I don't know. It's just worked out like that. But yeah, I have noticed here in Tacoma, I'm sometimes, depending on where I'm going in the downtown area, I'll park like 2 or 3 blocks up the hill, just so I can get, so I can have the free parking and not have to worry about paying downtown. Or I'll park, I'll go park at this park down by the water a mile out of town, and I'll run back downtown, just to avoid paying that parking. But
when I did drive, I lived for my placard. I really did, you know, and even, you know, and I didn't use it all of the time, but it's kind of like my scooter and my cane. It's like I may not always need it, but when I do, I'm glad it's there.
Yeah.
So that's my opinion on the placard. But I totally respect your, you know, your position. Kind of like, you know what, this is where I am. If I need it really, really badly, I'll make it happen. But right now, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, well, you're saying I need to go in and see my doctor to get this placard. The placard's not a necessity, and there's no real other necessity to go see my doctor. And as of right now, I haven't seen a doctor in, I don't know, for 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, but it's like, you know, it's for my MS, and it's like, you know, it's like, okay, whatever. I guess if I don't need this, then I don't need that. So whatever. Moving right along. That's how I am about it. Besides that, you know, it's actually been suggested by friends and family that I just don't even worry about having a car and just run everywhere.
Well, you know, I'm an MS patient, so of course I'm going to say, you know what, like it's okay, like have it there. If you don't need it, that's fine. But it's good to have when you do.
Yeah, definitely.
so at least hold on to your car, Shane.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well,
that's
hey,
just my advice.
I need to hang on to my car so I can drive down there and at least have coffee with you.
There you go.
Yeah, bonus.
Yeah, works for you, man. Keep that car. Keep that thing.
Yeah. Well, actually, I could ride the Amtrak or something down there, but. All right. Well, yeah, I'm just looking at the time, and we've come to that time. It's about, you know, it's time to start wrapping it up. And okay. I was just wondering if you'd like to, is there any contact info you'd like to give, just in case so other people can get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, you can reach me on Facebook. Anybody can actually reach out with a DM. My name is Shari Staten. It's right there. I'm sure you can see it. You can reach out for me there. I am also available with a Gmail. You can reach me by my email, which is my last name, 0518@gmail.com.
Okay.
Or actually S. Staten. So my first initial, last name, 0518@gmail.com.
Okay, right on. And I'll do what I can to remember to tag that information put your contact info in the post on this video. But
oh sure. I mean, I can send it to you as well, as long as I'm having an MS moment in terms of my Instagram and Twitter.
Oh, okay.
So because they're similar names, but they're different.
Yeah.
So I don't want to give inaccurate information. So what I will do is shortly after this, I'll confirm it, and I will DM you my information, and this way you can you can add it to.
Okay.
Whatever.
Right
on. You're more than welcome to reach out to me.
Okay. Right on. Thank you. And I guess with that, I'll just close by saying the usual: stay kind, optimistic, and grateful, and have a phenomenal day and phenomenal week. And I'll see you next Sunday at 8 a.m. Pacific right here on VT Radio Universal.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good day.
Thanks for having me.
Oh,
Shane.
let's have a selfie moment. Later.
Peace.
Okay. See you later.